All right, everyone. We are going to move on to our next topic, which is our speaker panel discussion. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the open spaces and got a bit of time to go get more coffee or caffeine and are ready to go. So we've got a group of folks. I'll have them introduce themselves here in just a second. But really quick, my name is Jessica Clark. I'm one of the organizers here. I am also part of the Capital One team. So definitely excited to be here. I think this is probably, my 8th or 9th conference. So looking at Mark. Oh, 7. Okay. No, it had to have been more than that because based on Vivi's birthday, it had to be more. So anyways. All right, so we've got a great panel lined up, so we'll just go really quick. If you guys want to just do quick introductions, even though everyone should know you because you all spoke today. So
I spoke yesterday.
Oh, you spoke yesterday. All right, real quick, fast.
All right, I'm Jared Sutton. I just did the talk on generative AI and alerts.
I am Joseph Clay. I just did the lightning talk on how to leverage AI to suck less in the cloud.
I have a microphone. I'm Faisal. I give a talk on DORA metrics and their business impact.
I'm Andrew Clay Schaefer. DevOps has been very good to me, and I'm glad I stole it from my friends.
Mark Anderson. I did not give a talk, but Jessica wanted me to be extremely uncomfortable. No, I work at GMF. I'm a cloud guy, and I think my other 2 former employers are also well represented here as well. So. In good company.
All right. Well, thank you guys for participating in this. Okay, we're going to start with a little bit of an easy question. But how do you guys stay updated and keep learning about DevOps? Is there a podcast you follow or maybe a newsletter? And alternatively, if you don't have an answer to that, you can give us your favorite Taylor Swift song. So your choice.
I'll start it off with the uncomfortable one. I know one Taylor Swift song, Love Story, and I only know it from The Bear. So I could be Richie singing in the car in that episode. But if you haven't seen The Bear, you have to go watch it. So back to how do I stay up to date? I'm a little old school. Like RSS feed readers are still a huge part of me in my life and for everything. I don't go to news sites or anything, or I just subscribe to the feeds and then can hit mark as read a bunch. And so some of them, whether it's around cloud, there's last week in AWS, there's some of them around some of the other cloud providers are all super good to stay up to date. And some of them then have good links to kind of DevOps and processes and those sorts of things. So that's usually what I find is the best for me.
The easy answer used to be the artist formerly known as Twitter, but that's kind of a mess right now. I would say I get most of my new information. One, you have to be authentically curious. So like you have to want to know new things. But I get sent lots of things from my network. That's where I learn new things. So if someone, in my circle, I do scan some Twitter stuff and like some other social media stuff, but it's really just the network that you make. It's like, and I'm constantly sending things I think are interesting to those other people that I feel like they would be interested in it. So that little network, there's a bunch of us just like bouncing new articles back and forth all the time.
There's this really great conference. It's called DevOps Days, Dallas. It's one of the ways I use to stay up on things.
For me, part of it is working in consulting. You're genuinely forced to expand your horizons because for X client, you're going to be working on this tech stack, and then you pivot over and you have to learn an entirely new tech stack, which exposes you to all the beautiful and ugly side of it because you have to learn new things, but it also keeps you honest and on your toes on learning. And the second thing is I want to echo the same point is that it's honestly through network. Like 2 days ago, I had dinner with someone named Jared who told me about this amazing tool that's called OpenAI. Is that what it's called, right? Yeah, one of them. Yeah. So you learn about it, and actually I've been reading on some of the things we talked about over dinner for the last couple of days, and then it piqued my curiosity. So when I have time, I'm going to go explore.
Mine is probably a little bit more unique than most people's. I am actually a pretty hardcore gamer, so most of my sphere usually revolves around Discord and things of that nature. So that's pretty much where I get most of my information, and I stay up to date. I have a lot of friends on there. I have a lot of communities that I follow that I get some pretty cool, unique information that you really can't get anywhere else.
All right, great answers there.
What is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
That's a really, I don't know.
Or do you want to answer it about DevOps?
I love them all. I can't pick. There's just so many good ones. Yeah, exactly. The whole catalog. Yeah.
Stay after the show. She's going to sing.
Absolutely not. Okay, so moving on to a little bit harder questions, and I'll ask you guys kind of individually some of these, but feel free to chime in. So this first one is for Jared. How has your work evolved over the past year?
That's a good question. So I would say that my work over the past year has evolved just kind of really focusing on generative AI. I think there's in two key areas. One is sort of learning about generative AI, so like trying to figure out how to apply generative AI towards DevOps. But also something that I became aware of over the course of the year is that generative AI enables all of these little 1 and 2 person creators who couldn't write applications before now are writing code for the first time and deploying applications for the first time. And I was on this. I still hang around Twitter, but I was on a Twitter space, and it was with a bunch of people who had built these small AI apps, and every one of them said, "Oh man, yeah, DevOps sucks. It really sucks to try to support. Like every time I deploy an application to the cloud, then I have to I use Vercel, and there's these graphs, and I don't know what any of this stuff means. Like I just need my app to work." So and somebody else had sort of reinvented interprocess communication by using threading, trying to get Replit to do this sort of like multi-threaded sort of thing, and it was just naivete, right? Like they just didn't know, and so I think over the course of this year, I've spent some time trying to kind of help this like new field of people begin to take control of like understand how to run their applications at scale.
Any others want to chime in on that one? No?
So to echo what he said, what Jared said, the ability to generate code, basically anyone, anywhere, including everyone in this room, like OpenAI or Claude, pick your favorite model, is your technical co-founder for any little side project you wanted to do. And you can make like 5 to 10 hours a week as a side hustle and like have some code like the first day. It's just crazy. You could ask, like, you also can get into these doom loops of non-productive, which I feel, I don't know if anyone's playing with generative AI, but if you haven't, you should. And it will change, I believe it will reconfigure everything in software development. Lots of our assumptions about what software development look like will be totally different in the next couple of years. And you could just say, hey, do this thing, and it'll give you something that almost works, which is the danger. Because then you got to and it's sort of like a slot machine. You just keep pulling the lever, like hoping till you get a better strategy to decompose it and put it back together. So that's a big thing. And then like my work, and what I focus on a lot is trying to get organizations to do things. So I've been putting a lot of time into thinking about how do you get the organizational sponsorship? How do you get the, like, DevOps is great, like in the details and trying to make these things, although it's not a solved problem, like let's not pretend that it's solved in any way. Having details about how to scale, having details about how to deploy, there's still difficulties. But then if you don't have support for that up the chain of managers, like it doesn't matter anyway at an organization of any real scale.
Awesome. Well, staying on the theme of AI, and this is actually open for everyone, what do you think is like the most common misconception about AI?
Honestly, it's pretty straightforward that you need it. That kind of ties to the last question we were talking about, and a lot of my work has been answering the question, well, we're seeing a lot of AI on the market. Should we invest in it? And or rather that the question I get is like, hey, we want this. The question should be, should you? Not do you? And then this educational piece of what business value does it add to you has been the biggest thing. So to answer this question, it's mostly education. At least that's been my experience.
So I'm old enough to have seen a few things, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with the term AI winter, but that's happened a few times before. And you can look in Wikipedia, which is the trusted source for everything. So yeah, AI winters come and go. So there's like a lot of hype that's probably not going to be fully met. I'm a big believer in it's transformative, but at the same time, what I see right now is there is a lot of attempts to use generative AI to solve problems that are not really appropriate for generative AI. So generative AI is great for generating things. If you want to make something, it's a great tool. There are a lot of other ways, much cheaper ways, to solve categorization and decision-making problems. There's a whole bunch of other AI and ML that was well developed and well established before we got to the generative stuff. So, and then my background's in mathematics, and this might not mean something to everyone there, but sometimes the $5 logistic regression will do just fine. You don't need to spend millions of dollars trying to answer this question.
Great. Okay, so kind of going on this theme of like innovation and evolving, Mark, this question is for you. I saved the hardest one for you, sorry. How do you balance the competing priority and that kind of demand and desire for innovation versus risk management? You know, especially you work for a financial institution, like how do you balance those things?
Well, I'll talk in generalities, but, I think, number one, it's including those folks in the conversation to do it, because that's not what you can do alone, right? And so if you talk about the prioritization, it's where can you learn in a safe space to have a little space there versus, solving or attacking something really big and has, maybe a lot more risk with it. So I think the other thing is not just risk management, but to pivot a little is how do you make space in your kind of day-to-day work capacity to do that? And that is one of the challenges is, how do you focus and allow folks to go experiment, whether it's some of the things we talked about here or some other innovation things. And so I think, number one is, like I said, including those risk stakeholders and figuring out the right place and a structure and a place to do that safely, but also when you get that is like, how do you kind of reward it and say like, hey, like we want the experimentation in the right way here, and here's where you can do it. So, because a lot of times we do it and we'll probably fail a few times, right? And we'll learn something along the way. But, if you don't kind of reinforce some of the positives of trying that, you don't make progress.
So governance, risk, and compliance is really interesting because I think at a certain scale and in regulated environments, that's been a bottleneck for a lot of the things. So there's some things you could start to think about automating GRC. That's interesting. So at the same time, I think innovation is a loaded word. And for most tech, what's been called big tech, it's not really innovation. It's just applying these principles to be able to scale, and it's really mostly like data logic. Who can get the right data at the right time to have the right experience? And it's not about innovation, it's about, so this is like a silly thing I say to people. You think you want innovation, but the innovation that you actually need is the obvious solution to your obvious problem. That's what a lot of organizations need. It may be innovative in some domain that you're in, but it's really just a bunch of kind of like data and UI, well solved, well understood problems, and you should just take those solutions and then make it happen in your organization.
So I think one of the things that I think DevOps in general probably could do a good, or DevOps practitioners could do is we embrace the sort of like DevSecOps, but when it comes to like governance, risk, and compliance, at least in my experience, you kind of want to like keep those folks away. But I think that's a mistake. I think understanding risk management, like actually picking up a CISSP book, for instance, and grab some coffee or something to keep you awake while you're reading it. But the notion of managing risk, like it's not risk elimination, it's risk management. To manage it, you have to know what the risk is, right? So this is where like the whole notion of like risk registers and stuff comes from. Is like we need to see and acknowledge that those things exist and that those things are risks, so that the people who are the ones who are sort of responsible for shouldering the risk, the ones who have the financial penalties levied against them, who go to jail when things go wrong, so that they can see them, right? And so I think as we practice DevOps, I think drawing in like an understanding of governance, risk, and compliance, and what's actually happening with risk management, and the language that gets used, the vocabulary, the concepts, so that we can speak better. Like almost, we should have DevSecOps. We need to add like, DevSecOps, in a sense.
That 1,000%, because you have these organizations that have been spending DevOps investments for 10 years, and the bottleneck is still GRC. And it's not going to move until you do what you just said.
Okay. So thinking about, again, continuing to evolve and kind of new things on the horizon, Joseph, I'm curious to know, what is something that you're looking forward to doing within the next 12 months professionally, or that's something that you've never done before that you're looking forward to getting involved in, or perhaps learning more about?
Yeah, definitely. That is a great question. For me, I've been really sinking my fingers a lot into cybersecurity. So that is a direction that I want to start implementing a lot of these generative AI models and things like that, to where I can really use that to sort of think about how I'm moving through some of these processes, and think about how I can reach the people that need to be reached, like with what you were saying with GRC people and everything. So I really think that's something that's going to be super important moving forward. So that's definitely something that I think I would like to explore.
Anyone else have anything that they're looking forward to doing in the next 12 months?
Yeah, one thing I've been curious about recently is the intersection of AI and DevOps. I know we've had some discussions here. I think there was an open space on it, but it's mostly around the operationalizing of specifically Gen AI. Not saying I recommend it. I don't have an opinion on it yet, but that is something that basically answering the question of where does Gen AI fit in your CI/CD pipeline. That's something I'm curious about.
Awesome, I love it. All right, one final question before we'll open it up to the group. So we're going to get into a time machine, and we're going to fast forward to 2030, and we're hopefully still doing this conference, and you guys are again a part of the speaker panel discussion. What do you think we'll be talking about in the year 2030?
Still Taylor Swift song?
I mean, I hope so, but...
I really think that a lot of the talk will definitely involve ethics in AI. Because I think that is something that, as a society, we really struggle to kind of deal with, is how do we tackle a lot of these challenges and thoughts around this sort of thing. So I really think that's something that we're probably going to be talking about well into the future.
I think we're going to be exploring more the integrity of AI systems. So those generated images or whatever it is that you're using your Gen AI for, is it reliable? That's going to be at scale. If it's something we're using in our everyday life, what metrics can we use to determine the reliability of those systems and the generated output?
I think I'm going to pivot your question a little. Maybe what have we solved by then and we've moved on from? And I'm probably too optimistic, but as someone that spends a lot of time around reliability and observability, I think it would be really interesting if we've actually have a model for super highly available systems by that point and the observability around them that we've all kind of rallied around. So I think I've seen a lot of time, energy trying to solve that problem in different ways, and it's pretty complex, but maybe it's a startup idea of like, what is the Lambda ++ for here's how I have a multi-region global API service in, like, it's just in the right way and it has all the learnings over the last however many years, and we rallied around something like that and have moved on to not talking about that and how to observe it, right? It's just built in. So who knows? Maybe I'm overly optimistic.
So I think there might be a talk kind of similar to that. How do we debug distroless containers? Except the talk will be how to debug a distributed non-deterministic multi-agent system.
I'm just trying to get through the day.
All right, awesome. Well, if anyone has any questions, if you want to stand up, and this is also my ploy to get more steps in for the day. So does anyone out here have any questions? Stand up and I will come visit. No? Wow, no questions. I'll think of more questions for this group. I'll keep going. Okay. All right, well, while people are thinking, what is something that you wish you had known kind of like 2 or 3 years ago that would help you in your role or help you with something today? Like, what's something that you would have told your younger self?
Invest in OpenAI stocks.
Yeah, my last question was also to help me with like my gambling, so I could bet on all of the things that you guys were talking about. Yeah.
When I time travel, I'll tell you where to invest.
Perfect.
That's a great question. I think focusing on, I think from the client side more than it is, I think, for myself, right? I think on how can you establish practices to guide clients on when and when not to take on AI, specifically Gen AI, is something that because we're struggling with that right now, having practices and guards in place, I think would have alleviated a lot of those concerns that we're experiencing right now. It's the new thing on the block that's really hot, everybody wants to do it, but we still don't know a whole lot about it. Like even ChatGPT itself asks you, did I give you the right response? It's asking for your feedback because it's a non-deterministic system. So not having kind of a backbone or something to measure against, because it just came out of the blue, like, hey, ChatGPT. Not ever establishing metrics, we don't have the precedence for something so advanced and sophisticated that we can rely on. Not failing to have guardrails in place, I think that's something that we should have started before the boom of Gen AI. So, hey, let's prepare for this and establish those definitions, guardrails, guidelines on how to use it, what's acceptable to be used for, and when it's not acceptable to be used for, specifically in the workplace.
Mine isn't really technical. Mine is telling my younger self, be okay with being uncomfortable and aiming higher. As I've looked back, like I see sometimes that I probably could have made more progress if I'd been more comfortable with being uncomfortable in things and getting out of my comfort zone, whether it's aiming higher, doing something different. But maybe that's not a 2 to 3 year thing. That might be a 5 to 10 year thing in the past. But that way, I would probably have even more experiences. Maybe this is old man talking, right? And I'm closer to the other, but like it's, I think with that, whatever, I would get more experience with some of the things we're talking about now or in the past and have a even broader set of experiences to lean on.
Yeah, I think I'll add on to that. And my thing is more about the human side of things. I wish I would have told myself to network more. I think that's something that's super important and is going to be way more important going forward. I was having a conversation with Jared earlier, and we were talking about what is the end game of AI? What does that actually look like? And a point that he brought up was that human interaction is going to become way more important, because that is the source of being original. that is the one thing that will become a commodity. So I really think that, especially going forward, networking is going to be super important, which is why I'm here.
Awesome. Well, I found a question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So mine's not technical either, and it has to do with, I won't tell you all my stories, but I tell you some of them. The organizational dynamics that you have to kind of deal with them, participate in them. And there's a Plato quote that stuck in my head about this, which is that if you're not willing to participate in the politics, then you'll always be ruled by your inferiors. And I would give advice to my younger self about you need to, like, it's one thing to be technical, and it's one thing to know how it should work and what's right, and like you want to be right, but just because you're right doesn't mean people are going to do what you want. And finding ways to bring that conversation to the right level so that you can get the outcome and not just be right and argue about it.
Jared, do you have a point?
I do.
Okay.
So there's probably no one thing in my career that has paid more dividends for me than learning the OSI model. And the reason I bring that up is because learning the fundamentals of how things work follows you all the way up the stack. So I keep that one sort of base skill of understanding kind of how networks work and how packets move back and forth.
What layer is politics?
9, 8, somewhere in there.
You've seen the shirt that has that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So how that factors in today, right? Would be learn the fundamentals of matrix multiplication, get a decent grasp on machine learning, or to the point on Plato, learn philosophy, right? It's hard. You don't get much closer to the base foundation level of things than learning philosophy, because that helps you both in math and science and the structure of how we do things in a logical way, but also how we relate to each other. And those both of those will be incredibly important as we start dealing with generative AI, and AI systems that are starting to behave more like entities, we'll say.
All right, so moving to our first audience question.
Hi, I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I was talking to a friend the other day, and she's not in tech, not quite with a tech background, but she's doing manual classification for some AI models, and was really interested to think about how could she do this as a career. So I was thinking a bit about that's probably quite lucrative. It's obviously like a hot topic. There's a lot of demand for it. But my thought today was do you go straight into learning about AI? How much do you need to do software development or DevOps? And I was just curious as to opinions on someone coming from that angle. Do they go straight into one topic, or do they need some of these fundamentals? And if so, what kind of path would they take?
My answer is I can't give you a straight answer, to be honest, but I think the answer is it depends on your philosophy. If you're the kind of person who appreciates knowing the low-level details and you're in it to learn and enjoy, then I would recommend you start from the bottommost level that you can get your hands on, even from the how do you build a compiler with bits. So you can grasp the appreciation of how cool it is when you press a key on your keyboard to what actually generates an AI model. If you're in it for work and for business, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, then you will not get the appreciation of knowing those level details, and you can instead focus on operations, on how can I generate more income from this, what are the things that can get me from point A to point B. So my takeaway is just what is your philosophy and what you're trying to get out of it. That's how I would go about answering the question.
So there's obviously a wave of this that's building, but I would say in general, and this is served me well, figure out something you want to do. You want to solve a problem. I think it's hard to have this kind of undirected learning. Obviously, if you see a demand that you are going to fill. Like someone's hiring for that skill, like go develop that skill, but you're going to develop much deeper understanding if you go into like, I want this to exist in the world, and then you make it happen. You build that thing, and you're going to learn so many things about all these little details, and you're going to run into the DevOps problems, you're going to run into the AI problems, and then at the end of that, you're going to have just a much richer understanding than you would if you kind of went through a text.
Question over here. Y'all have been here for 2 days. You've had a lot of speakers that you've heard, conversations that you've had. I'd be interested in what's one thing that you each are going to take away back to your workplaces from this conference?
You don't know what to copy. That's probably the one phrase that sticks in my mind the most, is to think about what we're copying and like why are we doing the things that we do.
I just love this community, right? So just coming and seeing people learning and excited and trying to get better just inspires me. So that's what I always take away.
I mean, I think the thing, and it's more on the kind of culture side, is listening to people as to where they are to help them where they are versus where maybe I think they are, right? And so more of that listening skill. We had a lot of deep technical topics and also culture things, but how can I use that to help folks then get into that and figure and have them, have them progress on what they need to. I did, I loved a lot of the kind of learning culture things that Nora Jones and a few others kind of talked about. And it doesn't have to be incident management type stuff, but I also think that because we'll never make a jump like from intermediate to expert overnight, right? It's 1,000 little jumps, maybe even a few backwards, hopefully more forwards than backwards. And so those are the things that I kind of take away from this.
For me, it's a lot less about technology and it's more about the human side of things. I actually jotted down some quotes from some of the talks earlier, and it was amazing to me that because they were all given by amazing executives from the couple of keynotes to one of the talks yesterday, and all of them, I extrapolated one theme, is that leadership and what you invest in your people is much more valuable than the technology. The technology always changes. Somebody can learn it, and in some cases you can have a Gen AI write the code for you. But that human side of things will never go away.
Yeah, I'll definitely piggyback off of that as well. I really see it as you're kind of mixing art with technology sometimes, especially when you're dealing with other human beings. So the thing that I will take away is that there's always a human element to everything, including all of the technology, everything else. So that's something you really have to keep in mind going forward on some of this stuff.
Awesome. We've got one more audience question.
Hi, thanks for all the great minds here. I just wanted to ask, every time technology, every decade you get a buzzword. This time it's AI. To bring you back, 3 decades ago, I don't know anyone knows, there's a language used to be called Lisp, L-I-S-P. Then it came in the 2 decades ago, everybody want Unix. If you take HP, IBM, they have their own Unix, Sun Solaris, big computing power. That time the buzzword is Linux, it started. Then it featured next one, and after a decade, now there is no Unix or Linux. Then the cloud came in. So every buzzword take the technology to the next level, but it also killed the one which was there for a long time. So right now the buzzword is AI. So in next decade, what will die in terms of technology and what will survive?
I don't think anything ever dies. Like literally nothing. You can go, a lot of organizations, I mean, you can find mainframes like all the way down. So I feel like it's more like sedimentary layers that you get, and maybe there's not a DEC alpha running somewhere, but you can go pretty far back and not see it. So I don't see us like getting rid of things. Maybe like AI will modernize things, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
So I think AI will disappear, but not be gone. It'll like fade behind the curtain, but it'll actually like become more embedded, like in what we do. Like it'll sort of become invisible. Like it will still be there, but just be invisible.
And then underneath that there'll be Linux.
That's right. Yeah, but underneath that there'll be COBOL.
Yeah.
But I think like in the next decade, looking at like what the next sort of buzzword is going to be, or might come along. Something that hasn't quite seen its day yet is it's been a buzzword, but I don't think there's ever been. It's kind of like the AI winter thing. Would be quantum computing, right? I think that stands a pretty good chance of finally hitting the moment when practical quantum computing hits the scene, right? When we have to rethink most of our encryption mechanisms, and when public key cryptography stops being as effective as it was. I think that could be sort of the next decade buzzword, and I think generative AI might, in some manner, shape, or form, help accelerate the supporting technologies around that.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to tack on to the previous gentleman's question a little bit because, well, first off, I want to say, since you guys brought it up, mainframes will never die. They keep trying to kill them, but mainframes will never die. Next time you swipe your credit card, just remember it doesn't work without a mainframe. Today, when you look around the industry, everything is infused with AI. Every marketing campaign, AI infused, AI this, AI this, AI this, AI the other. And it reminds me of sort of like when the keto diet came out, and now all of a sudden you could have like, a chocolate cake, but it was keto friendly or something like that, right? How much of the current AI do you think is hype? And how much of it do you think it's been out for 5 minutes and we've already devoted the whole end of the conference almost to talking to AI? So give me your thoughts on that, if you don't mind.
It's not all hype, but there's definitely some hype. And I like I said before, I'm old, but I feel like right now the enthusiasm and investment is somewhat out of proportion with what is going to happen. And I am predicting, happy thoughts, that you're going to basically see an almost .com-like crash coming out of this before you get back to the new normal. So take that with whatever you will.
I think, so there was a hype cycle around cloud, right? Everybody was moving to the cloud. Everything was in the cloud. And honestly, I don't know, was there a crash with the cloud? Like, was there a moment when the hype cycle sort of died off of the cloud?
Well, it didn't have the same kind of peak of expectations.
Right. Okay. So maybe it never hit that peak, but it's become a freight train. Right now, there's some talk now about sort of migrating away from the cloud and like when should we not use it. I think there's a great deal of anticipation for what AI could do, and if it fails to continue to scale at the rate that it's been so far in terms of the capabilities, then we'll see, I think, the heavy crash. I think it's probably too early to say whether it's going to do the kind of the crash thing. Or whether it's going to look something a little bit more like the cloud hype cycle, where we see this like immense amount of adoption and not the same crazy crash, but still a decline. Like it won't be the thing.
So the enthusiasm for the cloud and the investment that went into the cloud was largely led by these already established organizations that were putting their own money, reinvesting in their own future. And that is not similar to how the AI is being funded right now. So you have massive bets coming from external sources, like Amazon, Google, Microsoft were already printing money, and then they like, oh, we could print money this other way too. And that became the cloud, and this this cycle right now is people putting, from the outside, putting a lot of bets on the table, and I don't see all of them paying off. There's just, like, the math right now for what they're going to generate as businesses doesn't balance with the bets that are on the table.
Yeah, that's a fair point. The monetization side of generative AI, somebody's going to have to pay the piper on that one, and it hasn't happened yet. And to that point, I think I agree. Like, when that happens, you're at the very least going to see a pretty significant change in how generative AI looks.
I'll add a bit more color from my experience, but number one, keto is not a good thing. I don't recommend it. So enjoy your chocolate cakes. Carbs are not bad. Number two, I want to draw a distinction between AI and Gen AI. I think AI as systems are actually reliable because they are still deterministic systems, especially when it comes to like machine learning, neural networks. You can build. Yes, they make predictions, but they are based on training data. They're not generating new outputs based on criteria. You have much more concrete base level training and testing of a model that went into place to enable it to make the decisions that it's making. Gen AI, on the other hand, is different approach, different paradigm, different models, especially that a lot of the LLMs we use right now and like in ChatGPT and whatnot are sequential large language models connected together. You have your generation model, you have your input analysis model, your output predictive model, and they all talk to one another. So there's a lot of places where things can quote unquote go wrong, and they can lead you to having the things like hallucinations that come out of it, the bad outputs that you get really frustrated with as an end user. So going back to artificial intelligence that is still available, it's very reliable. Like, look at simple things like the facial recognition on your iPhone, right? That uses technology to scan your face and make a deterministic call on, yes, it's you, you should get authenticated. No, it's not you. And those are very reliable and tangible systems that we have. And I think those are here to stay. I think things like Gen AI will, I don't want to say die down, but the hype will definitely slow or dive off a cliff, to a smaller cliff. Soon enough, when people realize that what you're putting into it doesn't necessarily get you the output that you're expecting out of it. They're fun, but are they reliable? Can they drive your business? We don't have enough data points to make that call right now.
All right, well, with that, we are out of time. Once again, speakers, I want to thank you for all of your insights and perspectives. This has been super engaging and interesting. Another round of applause for our speakers. Thank you. All right, so I am going to pass the mic to Roger to move us into the next session.